he said he was hanging out with his family, and all of a sudden it just went bam, and his eyes went, the way he called it, just started getting blurry. So after practice, I kind of hurried in there to talk to Duchene, because he's usually, as with a lot of players, pretty quick to get out of there when they need to, especially in optional. And Duchene was really honest. I told him right away that I had a bunch of concussions in my career, so I was just curious about what he went through specifically, because he did speak to the media last night after the game, and was very open about how tough it was. Basically said the word concussion for the first time. Talked about how the process was very frustrating. So he told me he had what he calls a vestibular concussion, which is basically the sensory system for balance and your spatial recognition. So basically, it helps keep you focused, your eyes focused, but also your head in space. So when you're turning your head, it keeps you focused so that you don't start to either get dizzy. The symptoms are dizziness, not unable to focus, where it kind of gets blurry and goes in and out a little bit, like what I'm seeing all the time.
I think I had
try
one
to
of them
read
this
these
morning.
super chats. Yeah, and so he talked about how that was the toughest part for him. But the interesting part that he told me was that he had the hit Middleton, right, Minnesota, in the home opener.
Third game of the year.
He actually felt okay. They held him out of that next game just because from other stuff, right? It wasn't that he thought, oh man, I think I have a concussion. He had some neck pain and things that were
which we actually speculated about at the time.
Yep.
Of chest, shoulders,
something that they thought was really just an upper body injury. So they kept him out of that game. He plays the St. Louis game. He said he felt pretty good in the St. Louis game. Didn't have any issues. Day after that, midday, he said he was hanging out with his family, and all of a sudden it just went bam, and his eyes went, the way he called it, just started getting blurry. He couldn't seem to focus on things. Ugh. He started to see things. And from that point, the interesting part about concussions is usually they're pretty linear, right? You get the concussion, the symptoms are pretty heavy, and your job in recovery is just to go from the heavy symptoms and have them deteriorate as you go, and lower and lower and lower. And when you have a bad day and it goes up, you pushed it too hard. With Matt, it wasn't linear at all. It was a few symptoms here, They never really totally went away. He told me it was frustrating because you can't have a full good day. It was just a little bit less or maybe a little bit more. And that's a really tough way to gauge whether you're doing too much. So Matt was talking about his eyes were the number one thing. He didn't have the traditional, headaches and fogginess. It was really just his eyes getting dizzy, spatial recognition, as we were just talking about. And that made it tough. That's why he put the visor on. He said, it wasn't necessarily like that he had to have the lights or whatever, but he did say one of the big ones with the vestibular system is that crowds, when there's a lot going on, it can make your eyes start to wander and everything gets really distracting. So we put the visor on because he said at a rink, you got noise over here, you got fans over here, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So it just helped him kind of blur that out a little bit and focus on playing the game. And that helped him to be able to continue skating, which he was lucky to do. The fact that he was able to skate almost through 90% of that recovery was really good for him. So he said that the rehab was, he called it hell. He said it was just hours and hours and hours of, whether it was strength recovery, strength training to get his neck and things like that, or things on the computer that are eye awareness and stuff like that. He actually flew out to San Francisco for a little bit to work with the specialist. He said when they play the Sharks, I believe it's December 18th coming up here, he's actually going to go and work with that specialist again to try to continue. And the biggest thing he told me was the rehab's not done. The lucky part for him in the Stars is that playing games is now part of that, so that he can play, and that's part of his development here. But
he still has steps.
He still has plenty of steps he has to get to in order to do that, and in order to get him to that point. And he said, he's not sure when that's ever going to really go all the way away, and that's the most frustrating part. He said he had a concussion before. He didn't say which, if it was Nashville or Ottawa or where he was, but it was a really traditional one where it was just 10 days. He had the concussion, symptoms start to deteriorate, plays 10 days later. Whereas this one was really frustrating because he just could not gauge where he was supposed to be. And he told me the toughest part about it for him was that he didn't have a body of work before, because he played 4 games.
Yeah.
So like Nils.
Yeah, so he didn't have a baseline.
Didn't have a baseline to really, he just finally learned it. They're learning a new system, the new coaches, all this stuff. He comes in, he plays 4 games, and he's immediately out. So it was really hard for him to gauge where he should be. And last night he said his only goal was to simply be average, and he thought he did that. And then I said to him, luckily I got in the rink before you guys did, because his first shift, I was standing up there right before we got to the seats. his first shift on the ice, the crowd cheered the whole time. Whole time he was on the ice. They followed him around with the camera, showed him, they cheered, and then they gave him a big ovation when they put him on the big screen later. And when I brought that up, he started to get emotional. And he used the word emotional a few times, but he really said that means everything to him. The Stars fans are there for him, that how much they supported him through all that. And that is what carries a lot of these guys sometimes, right? They know this is tough. I'm in the dark days. I don't know when I'm going to be out of it, but he knows the support that he's had from the team, from the fans. And I just thought it was interesting the way he was open about all that, to be able to just state, here's what's going on, and it's not done yet. And he actually had to get up and kind of walk away before he was getting even more emotional. And there's a lot of emotion around the rink today. As I said, I mentioned Sagan with Duchene. You got the Tom Hicks stuff we're talking about. There's a lot of emotion around this team right now, and I will say that the team, the fans, everyone has made this easier for players that are going through this type of thing. So good to get the update. Good he was honest about it. And now all you hope for him is that each day is better. Like I said, he skated today, no symptoms, but no setbacks, no issues. Expected to go on this trip and play, and it's just good for.
He's going to write all that up, because that was a very extensive report.
Yes.
Really interesting.
Yes.
So if you're a diehard, you look for Sam's article in the coming days. If you're not, sign up. Luds, just briefly here, that's the one thing I took away from that Sam said of all the things was he didn't have a baseline for games this year. He only played in 4 games. Well, the rest of the team, most of it, and there's a lot of injuries that we've seen. The rest of the team has played close to 30 games to work through the changes in system from the Pete DeBoer coach team to the Glenn Gulletson stuff. And we've seen a notable improvement team-wide over the last couple months. Matt Duchene doesn't have that. So in addition to physically not feeling like he's been playing and he has to get back into that, I think Gully said today he's got to get a few layers, a few scars back up to sort of get into the grind of the season. But he also doesn't have the reps of playing in this system. And so when we watched last night and said, boy, he doesn't look like midseason Matt Duchene. He looks a little uncomfortable. Part of it may have been playing on the wing instead of center. Part of it's what Sam brought up about not having enough games under the system this year.
He looked rusty,
yeah,
which is common, whether you have a concussion or ankle or whatever it may be, and you don't play for 25 games, and you're sitting there and you're not able to practice with the team, and you're not part of the team, and then you have all that other stuff going on. So yeah, and again, the more I think about the whole playing on the wing thing, because it's unfamiliar in my opinion for Matt to play that way. But then on the other side of the coin, the more I thought about it, does that protect him a little bit? And so, because when you're in the middle of the ice and you play the way that Matt does, and he kind of, he plays an east-west kind of game, you've always got to be aware of what's on your left and on your right. And so if Matt's playing on a wall up and down, a fan's not going to punch you in the side of the head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the glass is there. So you know where you are. And so you can kind of see what's coming peripherally. And maybe that's something that they talked about. And maybe that's something that Matt said, I think I'd feel more comfortable there because I don't have to pay attention all the way around, 360. So, but again, I sent this to Ryan last night as soon as he went in the shootout, only because I was thinking we were doing the little drawing thing, and because I wanted to show Matt in the shootout, because I thought that was so important what Gully did, made that decision to put Matt in there. He's back. This is where we need him. Tyler's out. You're there. Let's get everything. Let's get the cobwebs out of everything.
Sam, that's fantastic reporting today. Really, really good stuff. Appreciate it.